Kathleen Ball, the discoverer of the Brazilian Templar cross out in the middle of a very remote area in the Chapada National Forest area of Brazil, about 3 miles outside of Brasilia. We're going to talk today a little bit about the Kalunga and how that came about. I have been researching the Templar cave, how it ended up, how did this cave end up in the middle of Brazil, and about what time frame was it initially carved out. And since there's not very much in the area that's left, there were no artifacts. I went in with a metal detector inside the cave and outside the cave extensively, and I didn't find any chainmail or anything. So I was looking for, evidence of people who may have known something about the Templars. And I have a friend over there who has helped me arrange many trips. They helped me arrange my trip into the Amazon. And Jeffrey Sheldon, he's a pool sculptor over there, very, very fine sculptor. And he worked with many of the people known as the Kalunga. Now, the Kalunga people, they arrived in Brazil and in other countries in South America on slave ships. This was during the 1500s. And these particular groups that live in the outskirts of Brazil, which is in the area around my cave, they escaped these slave ships as they were docking. They got off the boats and took off, and they ran up into the Chapada area, which is now called the Chapada National Forest area, near Alto Paraíso, Moinho, Cavalcanche, and São Jorge, which are the little towns that surround the cave that I discovered. And they seem to mostly have settled now. We find them mostly in the Cavalcanche area. So, long story short, they approached Jeffrey when they heard that I had made a film of the discovery of the cave, and they offered to give me any information that they could to develop my episode 2, which I was over there filming for in 2021. So I was first introduced. It was really interesting because I felt like I was going through an interview process, which I'm sure it actually was an interview process. First of all, I was introduced to the young man who works with my friend Jeffrey, doing the constructions of these pools that he creates. And so, we had lunch, we talked, and they really check out your energy. They really want to know who you are. They're very skeptical. And there's good reason for this because, they have survived since the 1500s, and we're talking 600 years. They've survived out there in the wilderness, and they have had to defend themselves from the government, from invaders, from anyone coming in trying to take their land. They were finally given the land by the government, the Brazilian government, several years ago, sometime within the 20th century. I believe it was the 20th century. Anyway, they were finally given those lands. But until then, their very survival was dependent on no one knowing where they were. And if anyone did know where they were also known to, these people disappeared often. They never came back. So, you know what that means. But if someone stumbled into their area, oftentimes they would just let them go. But if they felt that they were in danger in any way, they defended themselves and they defended their freedom. So, so it's, it was always the local people in Alto Paraíso and Moinho, São Jorge, and Cavalcanche. They've always feared the Kalunga a little, I think. They've always been apprehensive and treated them with a great deal of respect. And so that's what's come out of it. That's the relationship and sort of the environment that I was entering into. And I was perfectly willing to go through whatever I had to go through to meet with these people because I believe that they had vital information, which they did, um, about possibly the Templars, uh, about possibly some artifacts that they may have picked up themselves since they were in that area. And it turned out that they actually did have quite a bit of information that indirectly helped me to push back the dates of the times that the Templars were in that area and initially came into that area. So the interview process, this was really interesting. I met this young man, and then about a week later, he introduces me to his uncle. And this is also a young man, probably in his, early to mid 30s. And the same process. We hung out for the day at the job site, went and had lunch. He had dinner with Jeffrey and I, just having conversation. But I was always aware of the fact that I was actually being observed and interviewed. So at that point, Jeffrey asked him what was the next step in the process, and indicated that I was still very interested in an interview, just to make sure that we were still on the same page. And sure enough, they contacted me the following morning and said that I was being invited into the home of the Kalunga that live on the outskirts of Alto Paraiso in town. This is not the tribal areas. This is not their village, but this is a step closer. So of course, a couple days later, we arranged this meeting, and I was taken by the uncle and the son and the young man into this home. We drove over there, and they walked me over and introduced me to an elderly man. And it looked like several other family members. I believe they were probably all family. And so they all sort of, checked me out, asked me all sorts of questions, about the film, about what my intentions were, and they also wanted to know if I was willing to help them in any way, financially, or with supplies or anything. Because they also, you have to remember, they're very poor. They live outside of the rest of the social systems in Brazil. They are on their own. So, they do work in town for contractors and things, but that work is really not, it's piecemeal, it's not consistent. And so they really don't have very much money to survive on. They all have their little farms, they have their vegetable gardens and things, but as far as for clothing and necessities, they do need extra funds for that. So I assured them that I was interested in contributing to this, and that made them happy. So about 4 hours later, into this, very relaxed setting in front of this house, out comes this elder woman. And I immediately understood that this is the woman that's going to, either get me into the village or not. She's the one that held the decision in her hands. So we talked, we instantly hit it off. That was great. It was really nice. We instantly hit it off, and she and I talked about, the history of her people. It turned out that her tribe, her people, they came from Africa, and they were actually royalty. They stemmed from royalty. They were kings, they were queens, they were priestesses. And so they were they were sort of, they had a hierarchy within their own tribal construct that reflected this. And also the women seemed to be, it was sort of a matriarchal system to some degree. I mean, even though everyone in the tribal, community had a say, it seemed that the elder women, were the ones that made the decisions, which was, I found, very interesting and consistent with other tribes that I had studied and, researched in Africa. So here we are. I'm having this wonderful conversation with this woman. And at the end, she hugs me and grants me permission to go into the tribal village itself, which was way, way far out outside of Convalcanche, which was, about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive outside of Valparaiso. And so we prepared for that trip. I thanked her. I said goodbye. I contributed some funds to their family. They were very appreciative of this. And I felt, that I was being accepted by these people. So I gathered together, and I also made sure that it was okay that my photographer and my translator came with me. So I had to get them to come in and meet this woman as well, because they had to be vetted. So they were vetted. It was great. We had another, relatively lengthy 2.5 hour meeting with my photographer and also with my translator. So at this point now, we've been invited to the village, and within a couple of days, I was approached by the young man again, and he told us that we could go in on the following Friday. So I was really jazzed. And so we loaded up everybody in our little truck, and off we went deep into Cavalcanche territory and Kalunga, the Kalunga village. At the end of a very long, bumpy road out in the middle of what looked like desert, they had created a paradise. They had, very similar to the outskirts of Valparaiso, lots of beautiful trees, and they had, they had mangoes, and they had pineapple, and they had banana, and they had, a lot of wonderful fruit. So anyway, so I go in, and it looks like a dance area where they have a bar in the back, and this was an area they used for celebrations, and we were invited. They fed us, they played music for us, and then I was introduced to the tribal elders, and which was a group of about 4 or 5 elder women, and one of which was probably, I was hard to say. I mean, she might have been in her 50s, but she just looked so young, and she was very tall. And I immediately felt a sense of, that she had this regal presence. Her name was Aparecida. And she just grilled me. Basically, she grilled me. She grilled my photographer, my translator. I just sort of firing questions at us and letting us know of her apprehension. She was very open and very direct, which I really appreciated. And again, they also wanted to know if we could assist them financially, which I agreed to. And I said I would do what I could, see what I could do about connecting them with a website, with someone that could help them create a website and whatever they needed to connect with the outside world and generate income. They made these beautiful rugs, which I did buy a few of those too that I have in my kitchen. And they also had other handmade things that they sold, and I told them they could probably sell these things online. Well, anyway, the outcome was Aparecida at the end of this sort of interview picks me up and twirls me around and just gives me the biggest hug. And she's got this beaming smile. And she indicated we would be friends for life. And I really hope that happens, because she was amazing. So the biggest bit of information that they were able to give me was the fact that the Kalunga came in the 1500s, and they hid out in these caves that the Templars had already dug out and created. So it told me that the Templars came sometime before the 1500s, which really helped with the dating until I was also able to compare graffiti with the cave itself and a church in Peniche, Portugal, which even pushed the dates back further. But for now, I was really, really happy with that information. They also said that their ancestors had found many metal objects, all sorts of things, but they repurposed everything for their own survival. And so that I probably wasn't going to find any artifacts at the sites of any of these caves. So, but they also told me that there were more caves. So on my next trip back to Brazil, which is coming up this year, I will be investigating those other two caves. And you can go to my website now, www.templarsinbrazil.com. And I have a trip to Portugal coming up in October that you can sign up for. I also have a trip to Egypt that's coming up in February that you can sign up for. And I'm putting together a trip to Brazil and Peru that will be next summer in July of 2025. So that's not up on the site yet, but it will be coming up as soon as it is ready, the itinerary. You'll be able to access that and sign up as well. So I hope you enjoyed the program, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you all on the next YouTube channel program. Thank you.